Let's get to the company that Russillo is leaving behind, which is The Ringer, and they announced a deal of their own Tuesday, which I will just go ahead and tell you, Ben, that I called. I predicted this when The Ringer moved to video and really started to invest. I said, I don't think they're just doing this to look better than all the other YouTube videos. I really think that this is leading somewhere. You add in the fact that Bill Simmons has recently moved back into the studio for much of the time on his show, has started to do interviews again and all that sort of stuff. This was coming up from, you could see it coming from a mile away, and now they are announcing a partnership with Netflix. The Ringer 16 shows, I believe, will appear on the Netflix platform exclusively from a video standpoint. So no more YouTube content, Ringer content on YouTube. At least full-length episodes. Who knows what they do with clips and all that, but that is gone. They are going to only appear video-wise on Netflix, and, of course, will be available on audio on Spotify because that pays the bills for their parent company, which is an audio company. But what did you think of this move? And really, Ben, The Ringer being the first to move on what we've expected for a very long time, which is some network like this was going to make a deal with a streamer. There was just too much of a need for content, too much of a growing popularity of this type of content, these video podcasts. We kind of knew this was coming, but I wouldn't have necessarily predicted it would be The Ringer to be the first to blaze this trail.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it was going to be either The Ringer or McAfee. And obviously McAfee is, I would imagine, tied up. I can't imagine there are any ways for that to happen so long as he's in the middle of this ESPN deal. So it definitely makes sense. I think it feels like a pretty big need for Netflix because the way like Netflix operates right now, and I know we'll get to this with the NFL stuff, like Netflix, they're big on events, right? They like to have the big events, the big spectacles that you tune in for. Like that's great in theory. And obviously Netflix has no problems drawing an audience, but they are missing like that thing that you can just leave it on, like as background noise. Like you go to Netflix and you leave Netflix. Now, if you're a sports fan, you could go to Netflix at noon and just leave on a playlist of Ringer podcasts and let it play throughout the day, like as you're working, as you're doing your chores, as you're doing whatever. That's the one thing I've always felt like Netflix is missing. I feel like it's something YouTube you can obviously do it on. I think I mean, I watch a lot of the fast channels on like my Roku TV, and I watch the DraftKings network. You can do that. I know people do that with FanDuel. I just think this fills a need for Netflix.
Agreed. And I think that is actually like, no, maybe I'm wrong. No one, I've never heard in my real life anyone ever say the phrase fast channel. I don't think people use them. I don't know if I'm wrong on that. Maybe there are some people who have kind of stumbled across them and don't even know what they are, and they're just watching and and I just don't know about it. But I actually do understand the like business idea behind it because like it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like there was and is on TV a hole that it filled of just background noise, something to just kind of loosely pay attention to that I think we have kind of lost in streaming a little bit, right? Like it's so selective. You have to choose to watch something. And I think that actually kind of sucks for certain types of content, which thrived on the background noise era. But when they're in this pick and click era, it's harder to break through. But I say all that to say I get the point, but I've yet to see a place where a fast channel or anything like it has actually like broken back out into prominence that people are really engaging with it over the pick and click stuff, which I think we're all just kind of dealing with. Netflix doesn't have that, right? So Netflix doesn't have like just click it and leave it on. I mean, they have the autoplay. They could get a little bit creative with like if you pick a Ringer podcast, it will only ever play Ringer podcasts after that. Like I would hope they would be smart enough to do that, but I mean, a Bill Simmons show could sometimes be 2 hours, but I don't want Wednesday to play after I watch a Bill Simmons podcast. No. You know what I mean? So I hear you that it fills that a little bit, but I want to see actually like a kind of like technological innovation on Netflix's part to really make this work. Like even if it was like a live feed, I'm not sure if they're really if that's what they want to do. That doesn't quite fit how they typically operate, but I think that would really take this to the next level and make it work. And I actually think if they did that, I would use this. Like I would click on like the Ringer live feed on Netflix and just let it go for hours if they did it.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine there has to be some sort of like TikTok like algorithm coming for this. It's like, hey, you just watch Bill Simmons. Here's gold medal. Here's starting five. Like, here is like content that's related that we can tell based on your viewing habits that based on watching Bill Simmons, this is what you might be in the mood for. Like, yeah, I agree. There would have to be some sort of innovation. But as it stands right now, like you need like that kind of meat and potatoes content. It's not enough to just like tune in for a one-off documentary or docuseries type of show and then go into the next one. Like, yeah, you could do that. But if you want this to be programming that people are going to have on in their houses, like all day, I think there has to be like a more timeliness to it. There has to be a news aspect to it. And that I think, I mean, really what the Ringer does, because it's not just obviously their sports podcasts, their movie podcasts, like it gives you a wide lane to fill with that type of content.
I actually meant I had been meaning to bring this up on the show because there was like maybe like early football or maybe even like the dead time in August where I realized like 90% of my podcast listening had become the Ringer for a few weeks because the Dissect music podcast feed was doing like the best albums of the 21st century that I was like hooked on. I was, Bill Simmons, Zach Lowe was back from his break, whatever. And I was The Town, which you and I both listened to a lot, partially because, we work in the industry and everything. But there was a minute there where I was shocking myself at how much they have really built out a network. Like it is kind of has everything you would need. Now, I'm like the exact target audience, so I'm sure not everybody feels that way, but for the average 30-ish dude that's a sports fan and kind of has some other interests around that, like it really is almost everything you could need. So I think that Netflix is smart to pick them. Like the volume would have been another option here, I think, but they're not quite as like mature. The Ringer's been around for 10 years and they've been on Spotify for 5. So, the volume started 4 years ago and they really started to broaden outside of sports within the past like year, maybe 2. Like they're not quite ready for this. So I think that it makes a lot of sense. We have Nico in the chat saying, is it going to be all Ringer shows? The ones we know, Simmons, Zach Lowe, Todd McShay, a lot of the NBA and NFL stuff, the rewatchables, The Big Picture, Dave Chang's 2 shows, Dissect, which I just mentioned, and then a couple of true crime. So they asked about the Ringerverse. I don't think so. The one, though, that I wanted to ask you about, though, Ben, on this topic is, it's not really sports related, but hey, we're here. We might as well talk about it. Amy Poehler's show's not on here.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of fascinating because that's been like a buzzy hit thing for them. And it kind of loops back to the Russillo side of things where it seems like Amy Poehler has an arrangement at the Ringer like Russillo's about to have at Barstool. Yeah. And I don't know, it kind of fascinates me from a standpoint of like how this industry is changing and the fact that they could strike such a major kind of industry first deal that's clearly, being celebrated in Sweden and in New York City where Spotify is based and not have like the hit that they've developed in the past year be part of it.
I would imagine, that has to be some sort of contractual thing, either where she has like a first look deal somewhere else. And it's like, hey, if you're going to take something to a streaming service, like Peacock has to get a run at it first, or probably more likely it's like, hey, I signed up to do your podcast. If you want to put this on streaming, that's a separate negotiation we have to go through. Yeah. So I think it has to be one of those two, I would imagine.
I think so. And it's the only obvious, non-addition, but also the other shows that they've struck with non-ringer talent are also not on this list, so I think it backs that up, right? The Town is not on here, and Derek Thompson's Plain English show is not on here. So I think that that's just how they do it from a industry business standpoint. I felt like that was worth pointing out. And Nico asked a question that was related, so there we go.